not just protecting and safeguarding things that have existed in the past.
Okay, I have my four councillors now. I've had Councillor Bick, Councillor Herbert, Councillor Gearing and Councillor Moore. So, Councillor Herbert?
Well, what a way to start a council meeting from the Leader of the Opposition. Immediately, he accuses us of trying to fabricate an amendment simply because we don't want his words. We couldn't be further from the truth. We are in a negotiation here. A contact point is not a police station. We do not want to have the increasing use of single-driver police vehicles arriving. We have seen occasions where 8 police vehicles have arrived at the scene, each with a single driver. Not just a poor use of resource, but it reflects the fact, Councillor Bick and Councillor Martinelli, if we don't stand up for there being a real police station in the city centre, we will be policed by panda cars coming in from 5 or 10 miles away. That is why our position is to start and continue to argue that we need to have a base. We have already seen that the semi-disappearance of neighbourhood policing. Where do you think your contact point is going to have as a base for a few police cars? Where do you think your contact point is going to be a base for people to cycle and walk out into Market Ward, into Petersfield and other wards? We are not seeking to divide on this issue, but we are saying that if a divisional police station moves out, we've got to have a police presence in the city. 24-hour contact, but we also need to have policing here. So it is the case that we want to have greater integration. We would like to have shared offices, but we are not in the business of just damaging our own negotiating position by passing that as an easy route. It is, Councillor Bick, it's an easy route for the Police Commissioner to say some sort of daytime office is enough. We want policing based in the city 24 hours a day, not just coming in with blue lights flashing. And if you would like to look closer, as Councillor Bajan and I have done at the Peterborough model, you will see that some of the enforcement would not be appropriate in this city.
Councillor Gearing?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm not entirely sure that I trust the leader in negotiating with Tory grandees. His track record hasn't been particularly successful. So I think what is proposed here is an easy way out for the Police and Crime Commissioner to say, oh, we're leaving a police station in Cambridge. It's just on the outskirts, right? So in a way, by promoting this amendment, we're giving away a lot of our negotiation weight to the Police and Crime Commissioner to say, oh, actually, the new station is within the city boundaries. You have a police station in the city, and it's staffed 24/7. What is much more important, and important for especially the inner city wards, is that we have a continuous police presence. The Police and Crime Commissioner will easily say, no, a city with 2 police stations is not possible, therefore we dismiss this proposal outright. I think that's the wrong approach.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
I will be as quick as I can. I'd just like to say I'm very surprised at the idea of what successful negotiation is, because I think £70 million for this council to be able to build what will be actually over 1,000 homes, much needed homes, including 500 council homes in this city, is real success. On this point, I would just like to say Labour's position is that, as Councillor Massey said, we thank the party opposite for bringing this motion. We support it, most of it, but we, on this side, are asking for a city centre police station. So I hope that the members opposite will be able to support this amendment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Massey, you have 2 minutes if you'd like to say anything else.
So we didn't ask for 2 city centre police stations. We've not even asked for a police station on the outskirts. We're saying we want a city centre base, a station, maybe a smaller one maybe than the one that we've currently got, but we want a station. So we're not asking for 2, so I don't quite know where we've got 2 from. And the whole idea is that we are saying that if you give the PCC an inch, he's going to take a mile. So rather than playing into his hands, because he's already clapping to say, oh, this is brilliant, if you've got any ideas about shared facilities, come and let me know, so we can get rid of that station so you don't have one. It's not stupid. He wants to get rid of the city centre station. We know that's a fact. He's getting rid of the city centre station to put it on the outskirts. We already know, and it's in your motion. So I don't quite know why I've got Tim Bick looking at me and shaking his head, but there we are. You know, your motion says that you've got to note that the Police and Crime Commissioner wants to move the city centre out of the police station out of the city centre and to the outskirts. I'm saying we want to retain a city centre one because we need it desperately. And if you give him an inch and say to him, yes, let's investigate more shared facilities, he's going to go, that's great, you do that, and you won't have a city centre base at all, and everything will be brilliant. Thank you very much. So from that point, I do hope that you will actually change your mind and support my motion, as clearly it is the better one.
Councillor Martinet, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, right. Thanks, everyone, for the debate. I think overall, as indicated, I have no particular issue with many of the changes to point 1. I think a lot of what you're saying is entirely consistent with the motion as originally proposed. My concern, as it has been since brief discussion yesterday, was that by striking out point 2, we are removing the request for the council to work with the police to develop the shared workspace, and that essentially is removing the imperative for the council to act within its remit. And I think this motion is stronger without the amendment, which removes the one part of the process over which we actually have a degree of direct control in this chamber. So I think that what we're hoping to do is call for action from the City Council rather than awaiting Police Commissioner Ablewhite's whim. I am also pleased to announce that on this point we will be moving a petition to the people of Cambridge supporting and restating our goals from the original motion, and I expect we will be rediscussing that in due course. Thank you.
I will now go to the vote on the amendment. Please can I see those in favour of the amendment?
Right, that's 22.
Okay, and those against?
That's 11.
Okay. Now the vote on the motion as amended. Those in favour?
That's 33.
And those against?
None.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, everybody. Okay, we now go to agenda item 2B. I will now call on Councillor Cantrell to speak on the motion. You have 5 minutes between you and your seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, on Sunday, I was door knocking in Lichfield Road in Coleridge, and I spoke to a resident, a man, and he said the EU elections were about one thing. It's about Brexit. As simple as that. He was a passionate Remainer. He believed that Parliament's failure to resolve the matter meant that the only way to get out of this mess was to put it back to the people with an option to remain. And he just couldn't understand why those main political parties that claimed to be Remain were not clear on that position. They continued to sit on the fence, looking in both directions, playing politics with people's lives, and laughing at the same time when it's not a laughing matter. And he felt betrayed. As he said, these were his words, if you can't trust them on Brexit, how can you trust them on anything else, like those big issues in terms of tackling climate change? Now, as members know, this is the third occasion I've had to bring this motion to Council, to this chamber. And on the previous 2 occasions, the ruling Labour group has failed to categorically support a people's vote, a confirmatory vote. They fudged. They fudged on every occasion I brought it back. Now, I don't know what I've done to have the sudden change of the Labour group's position, but I welcome their clarity, even at this late point. And if only I had the magic to actually change their National Party's position, I would do it at the stroke of a wand, but I don't. So, Madam Mayor, given the pressure on time today, I'm happy to accept the bulk of the amendment proposed, and I do that under Rule 26(1) of the Constitution. But like the voter in Coleridge, Cambridge residents have been telling me, not just between the local elections and now, but during the local elections, that Cambridge Labour have had 3 years to convince their National Party to put a clear position in relation to Brexit. And yet, their position is still blurred. It's still blurred. And although we're 1 minute past midnight, there is still time to do that. The fact, Madam Mayor, that the Labour group has chosen to delete that part of the original motion that claims that we need to basically tell those main political parties to be very clear on their position on Remain indicates that they continue to play politics with the people of Cambridge. I move the motion, Madam Mayor, and I also have my revised motion as amended, which I'll distribute to the Council.
Mayor, if there's new wording, we should have had this in advance. If it's simply accepting the amendment, then that should be clear by the proposer.
Yeah. Could I have one, please? Sorry, Madam Mayor. That's all right.
Could I ask, through you, Mayor, to the proposer, is the motion being moved, is the amendment or the new wording being moved the same as amended, or is it different? Because it is normal practice for changes to be made and notified in advance.
Just having a quick check.
Having seen it, we will sustain our original amendment to the existing motion, because that's the only proper procedure to follow. You cannot simply put, and we would never put around this chamber, a piece of paper with no notice looking for different wording.
Madam Mayor, point of order. Just point of order for clarification, Madam Mayor. My revised motion, Madam Mayor, accepts in total the amendment, with the exception of the final paragraph, as I explained in my speech. And under 21...
So, point of order, Madam Mayor, this isn't a point of order.
Well, I'm actually making a point of order. Actually, if you read the Constitution, what it says is a member is allowed to make a point of order in relation to a matter...
Say again, Madam Mayor, this isn't a point of order.
Okay.
It is not
well,
a point
it is
of
a point
order.
of order. I'm explaining...
Can we just settle down?
Well, it's an explanation.
Excuse me, can we settle down, please? Let us have a look at and discuss here, and we'll be back with you in a couple of seconds.
Okay, members of the Council, what Councillor Cantrill is referring to is Council Procedure Rule 26, alteration of a motion, and it says a member may, with the consent of the Council, signified without discussion, alter a motion of which he has given notice. So the Council has to consent to the alteration of the motion.
So, can we have a vote, please? Do the council consent to this motion being altered? Can we have a vote then, please? Those against? No, this is this.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. What are we actually voting on?
Can I clarify what we're voting on, please? Does the council give consent to Councillor Cantrell altering his his motion? All those in favour of him altering his motion, vote now, please.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Isn't this a matter that the leader makes the statement? He has already said we do not consent. We don't need to take a vote on this.
Yes, you do, because it is a decision for the council.
Okay, the votes against.
So that's 22.
Okay, right. Okay, so
Madam Mayor, can I just clarify? So, as a result of the failure of my amended motion, my original motion still stands, and the amendment still stands. That's correct, yeah? Thank you.
So, Councillor Cantrell, did you have a seconder?
I did. Councillor Gearing.
Okay, and we have 1 minute and 50 seconds. Do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
I might actually reserve my right, thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Smith has given notice of an amendment which is on page 9 of the information pack. I understand Councillor Moore will second the amendment. You have 5 minutes between you. So, Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Well, I mean, anyone would assume there might be some kind of European election coming up. 3 years ago, we stood here before the referendum in an AGM, and at that point, we passed a motion where we as a council supported remaining in the European Union. Many of us here fought shoulder to shoulder for the Remain cause, and it's probably the only time that former Councillor Sanders will ever have a Labour-branded poster in his window. 3 years later, and here we are. Still, I'm very glad to say, in the European Union. But with the Tory government wasting more money and time on trying to force through its disastrous deal than Boris Johnson ever promised the NHS on the back of any bus. With the ridiculous spectacle of a Prime Minister who won't accept that the people should be asked to confirm if they want her deal or not, going again and again to Parliament with the same bill with no sign she will ever get it through. No one doubts the strongly Remain credentials of many, though not all, Cambridge residents. And I think I speak for most people in this room when I say that I have no doubt that Brexit will make Cambridge, the Eastern region and the whole country immeasurably worse off. And I don't think there's a person in this room who knows me that doesn't know my personal commitment to the EU citizenship and to the Remain cause. But a people's vote, a confirmatory ballot, whatever we call it, isn't the preserve of Leave or Remain. It's a chance for every single voter in this country to do what those of us who are union members are used to doing, to say whether we want the deal which has been negotiated or to stay as we are. A confirmatory public vote is the democratic chance for everyone to have their say on the deal put before them. To confirm if knowing what we now know we want to leave or to say no, we would rather stay. And neither, I have to say, are the elections on Thursday a proxy for that public vote, as the deleted paragraph at the beginning suggests. What we are voting for is people to represent us in Europe. I personally hope that they will serve, all of them, their full term. And so we need to choose the people who represent us best through that term. Of course, I personally want to see Alex Mayer and as many other pro-EU socialists and internationalists in that parliament as possible. I'm sure that others in this chamber, especially potentially, I imagine, Councillor Nessinger, might have different views on that. But for the Council to state in a motion, and obviously we're not telling people, people will vote for different reasons, but for the council to state in a motion that the election is a proxy for something else is not appropriate. And that's why we've removed that sentence. It shouldn't be a proxy because, quite frankly, we can do better than that. We should have the real thing. It's time to break the deadlock. The time has come for a vote between any deal negotiated and Remain. It's time to put it back to the people. But let's remember one thing. I hope that today we show our unity in calling for that public vote. And if we get that vote, many of us, I'm sure, will campaign for Remain for a second time. But if we do end up staying in the EU, we need to think further than that. We need to think about the kind of Europe we want. A Europe which supports ordinary people, which protects the vulnerable, which stands up for the rights of workers. A Europe where so-called liberal politicians do not block measures to improve mobile workers' rights, as happened very recently. A Europe which fights for a Green New Deal. A Europe which promotes LGBT+ rights. If we get the vote we are asking for today as a council, and if we end up remaining, as I hope we do, we on this side of the chamber will fight for a socialist Europe which is unequivocally for the many and not the few.
Okay, Councillor Moore, would you like to speak now or reserve your right? You have 1 minute and 7 seconds. Okay. Is there any debate? Okay, right, okay. Councillor McGurty, do you want to start? And then we've got
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Herbert.
Since we last debated this issue, Madam Mayor, the Labour Party's policy on a people's vote has not become even a tiny bit clearer. Even their candidate in tomorrow's EU parliamentary elections was forced to awkwardly make a joke of it at the recent Cambridge Hustings event. But what has changed is the public's lack of patience with it. They are sick to the back teeth of studied ambiguity and multiple messages, and tomorrow, finding only a single box next to the words Labour Party, I suggest they will look elsewhere. And looking at the amendment before us, and putting to one side for a moment the curious inability to actually write the words people's vote, which leaves us not for the first time with a Lib Dem motion calling for a people's vote having been amended by Labour and containing no reference to a people's vote other than in the original title. But I do detect a tiny glacial policy shift here, and perhaps that reflects the changes in the Labour group now present. And if so, I do welcome that. Because while we hear plenty about workers' rights and environmental protections, the claims of not a single job lost have long since faded away, because in-work rights and protections don't do you very much good if you're no longer in work. And while it's the Liberal Democrats who've clearly and consistently called for a people's vote on the Brexit deal with the option to remain, and it's also the Lib Dems who most readily joined the cross-party people's vote motion, which culminated in 1 million people marching through central London in March, and I yet hold out hope that all banners can be put aside when we win the opportunity of a people's vote and we campaign together for the UK to remain as full members of the European Union. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Singler. Hold on, I'll just go through the list. And I've got Councillor Tatala and I've got Councillor Thornber. Councillor Herbert, I saw you put your hand up, but you do get 2 minutes after the debate. So is that okay if I carry on? Okay, so I'm going to do Labour next, and then you, and then Labour. So, Councillor Tatala? Oh. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Brexit motion. Madam Mayor, considering the motion and a letter from Councillor Countrell to me, where he says politics is broken, is it not an irony? In 2008, their party leader said it is time for a real referendum in Europe. And in 2010, their party manifesto promised a referendum. as they wanted to be the champion of delegating power to the people. Is it not true? Their party continued to propagate, along with their then-in-laws, free movement was the root cause of the whole issue in this country. And they took a decision to for a referendum. Shall I remind you something, Councillor Council? Without considering the mere fact that only 6% of the total population of this country have come from Europe, you and your then-in-laws propagated fear into this country. Is it not that also true? The then leader of your party wanted a new point-based immigration policy to control immigration. You know why? Because you thought immigration and immigration alone the root cause of every problem in this country. Madam Mayor, despite all the rhetoric and propaganda, when look at the motion, I think politics is broken for them. And they have to find someone to blame. They got a divorce deal. The people of Cambridge cannot, will not, shall not trust your divorce deal. The moment you get a chance to go back, you will withdraw the petition, you will go back and sleep again.
Tatala, sorry, but thank you. Councillor Singer? Sorry, I always pronounce your name wrong.
I'm glad that members opposite are now finally putting in amendments which support a confirmatory ballot. I agree with Councillor Smith that the elections tomorrow are not that ballot, but tomorrow's election will without question be taken as an indication of the proportion of the country who do want to remain. And it is abundantly clear that most Remainers no longer consider a vote for Labour nationally as a Remain vote. I've spent the last couple of weeks at various hustings, and I have to say that the Labour candidates at those hustings have really struggled to articulate what Labour's policy on our future relationship with Europe is. And if they have struggled to articulate it, how on earth can voters hope to understand where the Labour Party is on our future relationship with Europe? I know that the vast majority of members in this chamber will be as horrified as I am at the rise of hard-right populism across the globe. In the context of that global threat to the values of liberal democracy, respecting individual rights, respecting the rights of LGBTQ people to live as they choose, respecting disability rights, respecting women's rights, it is crucially important that countries which do believe in liberal democracy stand together in defence of those values. With liberal values, as it is with other crucial issues facing our country today, whether those are tackling climate change, fighting organised crime or fighting for better environmental standards, we will be far more effective working in partnership with our European neighbours than we would be alone. Membership of the European Union has enabled this country to work in collaboration with neighbouring nations to shape and influence that partnership for 40 years. Those years have seen incredible peace and growth in prosperity across Europe. I'm glad that members opposite have finally agreed to back a confirmatory vote on a future deal, but I still have really serious concerns about what the position of their party would be in such a vote. The idea that any Brexit would not be a disaster for jobs and our economy is simply wrong, and the best option for both is to remain, and I hope that they will put pressure on their party to argue for that case. Thank you.
Councillor Thornburg.
Although I voted to remain in the EU and strongly believe that our future will be better if we will remain closely allied to our neighbours, I recognise that the result of the referendum was a vote to leave. However, we had no idea of the terms of any withdrawal agreement or the shape of the future arrangement between the UK and the EU, and many issues that were raised were dismissed during the campaign, like the EU-UK border in Ireland, have now become very significant. For this reason, we believe it is right for the people to confirm that they wish to leave the EU on the terms offered, rather than on the basis of vague promises and ill-considered proposals that involve non-existent technologies. And I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hipkin.
Madam Mayor, I believe the motion and the amendment to be vain. They're quite silly, frankly. And they're silly because they call for
Point
two
of order,
things.
Madam Mayor. Sorry, an inquiry. How many speeches were we having for each motion?
I rule to allow Councillor Hipkin to do his bit as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hipkin, would you like to carry on? I'll restart the clock.
Frankly, Mayor, I don't want to carry on. I think this council is preposterous.
Yeah. Please speak. Yeah. Please,
Making up motions on the move now,
Councillor
Khalid.
Hipkin. Shh. Shh. Councillor
Outrageous, how dare you? We've decided on the...
Excuse me, can we have hush in the chamber? Councillor Hipkin is now going to do his speech.
Both the amendment, both the motion and the amendment call for whatever deal is agreed to be put to call upon Parliament to vote for a confirmatory vote for whatever deal is agreed. And it also calls for a people's vote. I don't know where people in this chamber have been over the last 3 years. What I have consistently seen is the complete failure of Parliament to agree on either of those issues. It will not agree to a deal. It will not agree to a people's vote, as it is presently constituted. And I cannot see that, as a result of a general election, we would get a decisive majority for either of those two positions. I think what those who are calling for a second referendum or for a confirmatory vote should be careful what they're wishing for. I believe, I'm a great Remainer, but I believe that what tomorrow's vote will indicate is that the country is overwhelmingly fed up with the way that this issue is being handled, that Farage is tapping into that sense of frustration, and that he will win with a handsome majority over the other parties. If this is what they wish for, then that's what they're going to get. And another consequence of the failure of Parliament to agree upon a position is that we shall shortly have Boris Johnson as Prime Minister.
Yeah. Councillor Gearing, you have 1 minute and 50.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's curious that we are still debating this and that we're still having lots of differences how to describe these votes. My sense is that the benches opposite are still slightly split, right? So I remember not all Labour councillors, when I first joined, were supportive of Remain or a people's vote. I'm very glad to say that that seems to have changed. Well, we haven't voted yet, but that will probably change. What I don't understand is why the nomenclature people's vote is so controversial, especially for councillors who are standing in the European Union elections trying to actually, convey to the people. I received letters from my MP telling me that, a vote for Labour is now a vote for Remain, when a former mayor of this city publicly on the radio always says that Labour is no longer a party of Remain. I'm not surprised that people are confused, and with your amendment, you're adding to that confusion.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, would you like to speak now? You've got 1 minute and 7 seconds.
So Cambridge Labour has always been Remain, very openly. We have campaigned on that. However, unlike the members opposite, we have representatives working, representing people from all over this country. And what we have seen from this referendum, not only has the result seen that we're divided, but has resulted in a totally divided country. And why did we have that referendum? Because your party, when you got into bed with the Tories, you wanted it. And now look at the mess of the country. You have created a mess, and I do not know how we will get out of it. And the reality is, if we have a second vote now, which I have always wanted, the majority of Brexiteers will not be happy with the deal on it. They will want no deal. This is the mess that we are now headed into. I will be voting for my Labour MEP tomorrow. Thank goodness it's not a second referendum, because as has been said, particularly in this region, Brexit Party is likely to win. I'll be voting Labour.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Herbert, Councillor Herbert, you and Councillor Cantrell have 2 minutes each, okay?
2 minutes for
Councillor
you
Herbert
too.
and yourself have 2 minutes each. No, just two. Councillor Herbert.
So we have treated our officers and those that watch Cambridge TV to plenty of debates on this. It was the case that in the last vote that we had at the last debate, that a similar it is working. It was the case that at the last vote, we did actually vote for a second vote with the option to remain. So it is not true that this is a new vote, but I do think it is right that this chamber has an overwhelming say as if the amended motion is supported, and I hope it will be. But I do think that both Councillor Hipkin and Councillor Moore, and other speakers as well, but Councillor Hipkin and Councillor Moore have hit on the fact that the People's Vote does not run in Bolsover, in Grimsby, in Teesside, and in a lot of neglected communities around this country. So it is the Farage line that there has been a decision. And it was your coalition government that set this going, and you enabled the Tories to put in the leaflet that went through every door, "We will respect this decision." So a leaflet went through every door in the country saying the government would respect the decision. What a crazy, stupid thing to do, given that what it should be doing is what is in the best interest of the country. So it is about respect, and the reason why the last paragraph had to be changed, Mayor, is that two of the MPs that have fought hardest for Remain have been Daniel Zeichner and the former Conservative MP for South Cambridgeshire. So it is right that we recognise that, and I hope that the Council will support the amended motion, because Cambridge does want Remain, but there also has to be shown respect to those in our community who have the different view.
Thank you. Councillor Cantrell, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just coming back to the leader's point, I mean, I know his memory may be failing him, but if you go back to the video, actually your position was not clear on the previous 2 occasions the motions were brought. It was no ifs, no buts, no maybes. You had so many ifs, so many buts and so many maybes in your composite motion that actually you could drive a coach and horses through it. It was just the same position that you had on a national basis. Your colleague talks about the Conservative government and how they're delivering a disastrous Brexit and how we should be putting it back to the people. But your party's own website says that you're not going to put it back to the people. Your party's own website says that they're going to accept the referendum. And actually, as my colleague indicated, Barry Gardner claims that you are not the party of Remain. You are not the party of Remain, a former city councillor here. And your position on Brexit, it's with the birds. You want a strong relationship with Europe, but you don't want migration. You don't want freedom of movement. We actually want freedom. I know you're looking shocked. Go to your national website and have a look, because that's what you're saying. You are wanting controlled movement. You are not honouring freedom of movement. And so you want a strong relationship, but you need to have that strong relationship, you need to be part of Europe. You need to be part of it and accepting freedom of movement. And you talk about inequality. But Brexit will make all of us poorer, and importantly, it will make those people who are struggling to make ends meet even poorer. And what I don't understand is that Brexit is a project of the right, by the right, for the right, as another politician said. And Labour nationally continues to support that right-wing project, and I can't understand why.
Okay, we will now go to the vote on the amendment. Please can I see those in favour of the amendment?
That's 22.
Those against?
That's 11.
And one is abstaining, yeah? Okay. Now to the vote on the motion.
Madam Mayor, have you given up calling for abstentions?
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Because there have been at least 3 votes on which you haven't called for abstentions. I mean, it's not important that I register my abstention, but I'd like to.
Okay. Okay, we'll do that. I'm very sorry, Councillor Hipkin. Please accept my apology. Okay, now to the vote on the motion as amended. Those in favour?
So that's 33.
Okay. Those against? Abstention? 1 abstention. Okay, thank you very much. We now go to agenda item 2C. I now call on Councillor Thornburn to speak to the motion. You have 5 minutes between you and your seconder.
I'd like to stand before you and say how pleased I am that Cambridge City Council is leading the way in acknowledging the significance of species collapse and pledging action. But I can't, because I fear that even this will be too little, too late. I hope I'm wrong and that we will do today make contributions to turning us away from the ecological and agricultural disasters that face us. I hope that we can look back on today and say that it marked the point where we not only took the species loss seriously, but put proper effort into developing measures to deal with it. It's not that we have done nothing to date. This City Council takes climate change, food policy and biodiversity seriously, but we aren't yet treating it with the sense of urgency that it deserves. That can change today, and it's about time it did. We have known what is happening with climate change, global heating and species loss for decades. As far back as 1992, a biodiversity convention was adopted along with climate change convention at the Rio Earth Summit. Yet we have wasted time since then and done so little that we are on track for a 4 degrees rise in global temperature, with all that implies for our current way of life. We have serious concerns, not just that we will lose species that we treasure, but we will lose so many species that the food web itself will collapse and we will be unable to sustain agricultural production. So if the science was clear in 1992, why didn't we act then? We know the answer: business as usual, put in place by huge resistance, denied the science and confused the public. Now the issue is taken more seriously. Earlier this year, we joined with other councils to declare a climate emergency, and thanks to the Labour Party, Parliament did the same. We have heard Greta Thunberg say what says, listened to the arguments put forward by Extinction Rebellion, and considered the scientific consensus expressed by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity. We recognise that there are limits to what we can achieve on our own. Like every other local authority trying to do its best for the environment, like Manchester and Newcastle, come up against what I call the green ceiling, where our policies hit up against the restrictions put in place, first by the Tory Lib Dem coalition, and now by the Tories on their own, sacrificing species and our children's future to their ideological pursuit of austerity, an agenda set by the fossil fuel industry. But we will do what we can, both to make a difference and inspire others. We will make sure that our open spaces are more hospitable to wildlife and increase the number of wildflower meadows. We have many examples of the ways in which we in which our environmental principles must be considered and integrated across all areas of policies. And we will be talking to the Cambridge folk and all of the elected councillors and adjacent local authorities as we begin to rebalance the relationship between humans and the earth and the attempts to find a way to live in harmony with our home. With this motion, the City Council offers not just a statement of intent, but a plan of action, one that we believe will make a difference to encourage others to follow suit. We want to make a difference in Cambridge, and we want that difference to inspire others around the world to secure all our futures. Thank you.
Councillor Thornburn, have you got a seconder? Councillor Moore, would you like to speak now or reserve your right? Okay, and you'll have 1 minute 15 at the time, okay? Okay, so Councillor Dial, sorry. You have 5 minutes between you and your seconder, okay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Thornborough, for bringing forward this motion today and highlighting the huge impact that declining biodiversity is having across the UK. As is sometimes the case, this motion demonstrates that we have more in common with each other than things that divide us. However, the amendment that I've proposed is meant to draw attention to several key issues. Mindful of time, I will therefore endeavour to summarise them quickly. Firstly, we did declare a climate emergency in February 2019, but then subsequently cancelled our April meeting due to a lack of business. And we are now proposing to declare a biodiversity emergency in May without any reference to those discussions regarding climate. I think there is a risk that the word emergency could become devalued, and I recommend that we link the biodiversity crisis with the primary cause, rapid climate change. Now, there is a question as to whether the issue of biodiversity should be subordinate to climate change, but fundamentally, I think it should. And this motion should be considered as part of our actions in response to the climate emergency from February. Secondly, it appears to be our turn to highlight that the Council has already detailed biodiversity strategy, but Councillor Thornborough has already highlighted that in her speech. As the Lib Dems who introduced that comprehensive document in 2006, we welcome the current and new Labour administration's newly found enthusiasm for green issues and think it's only right to also note the excellent work that officers already do on these issues. Thirdly, I also make a few clear suggestions on things that we can also actions we can take this year. Bless you. And builds into the motion a need for scrutiny and to develop a long-term financial plan that will allow us to deliver these important goals over the long term. Finally, I've added some suggestions for further actions that can be taken this year. This includes reducing the use of herbicides and insecticides on the City Council estate for the obvious reason of protection of key pollinators, adding the need for not just raising awareness with stakeholders in the city, but as illustrated by Dr. Clark's question earlier, using the resources we have here to actually develop our policy. Committing to actually increase the number of trees in Cambridge. At the moment, our actual policy states that we will maintain and increase if possible. Let's actually be radical and make a clear commitment there. And then finally, developing a hedging strategy, a key part in improving biodiversity, in providing habitat and often food for many wildlife across the full year. And this is something that certainly could have helped in addressing issues we've had with the Arbury Road project in my area, but also that could be used to ensure that projects such as Milton Road really help to add to the biodiversity of our city. Mindful of time, I recommend this amendment to the Chamber. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor McGurty, do you want to speak now or reserve? Okay, and you have 2 minutes. You'll have 2 minutes. Yeah, there will be, but I'm just saying you'll have 2 minutes when it's your turn. Okay, is there any debate? Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, is that Mr. Somerville?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd also like to thank Councillor Thornborough for addressing this hugely important issue, which will affect not just the natural world, but our agriculture and our livelihoods, as she rightly said. The actions proposed are a step in the right direction. I'd also like to voice my support for Councillor Dalziel's amendment, particularly raising the need for scrutiny. There's not a lot of point in the Council setting itself targets if it's not willing to be held accountable to them. In addition, I think it is crucial to underline the link between the climate emergency and the biodiversity crisis. And this leads me to my principal concern here, which is there truly a desire from Councillor Thornborough's colleagues to support her in this worthwhile action, or are they looking for things that look good on a leaflet? If we don't address the climate emergency adequately, we will lose the battle on biodiversity, even if this motion is acted on in full. There's no point planting trees if we're asking them to grow in a climate that is 4 degrees too warm for them. There's not a lot of point in building hedgehog tunnels if they're going to be underwater. We have an administration that's avoiding action by pushing back CO2 targets to 2050 and then installing in new council buildings heating systems that will still be belching carbon dioxide in 2060. Is this an administration with a genuine desire to tackle these challenges, or are they fiddling while the world burns?
Thank you. Councillor Gearing, did you have your hand up as well? I did. Okay. Would you like to speak now? There's nobody on there. Put the hand up.
Yeah, I think we've all agreed on principle that the biodiversity crisis, as highlighted by the recent scientific panel, is really reaching our shores, and it might mean much more significant changes than even the ones outlined by Councillor Thornborough in her motion. I'd like to highlight that biodiversity needs to be a bit like climate change, streamlined into all our decision making, not just on planning, but also on transport. I'm very surprised that we don't have anybody really knowledgeable in our shared planning team to fully address the existence of the biodiversity crisis that we are facing. New buildings need to be planned with biodiversity objectives in mind. So the sort of hint in this motion that we could just do business as usual without spending any money, just declaring a biodiversity crisis is not good enough. I think this council should really start acting on these really good objectives rather than sitting on our hands.
Thank you for that. So, Councillor Moore, you have 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that some of the comments that we've heard this morning perhaps say more about the group opposite, and they're describing themselves rather than us. To suggest that this council is sitting on its hands is very offensive, particularly to all our wonderful staff and officers who do an inordinate amount of work running this city. I haven't got long. I support this motion. I do not support the amendment. I would suggest that some of the things in the amendment will be done as standard. This motion is moving us forward, and as Councillor Thornborough said, it's very important that we understand where we are now. I would recommend to this council that you support this motion.
Councillor McGurty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor Thornborough for bringing this motion to the Council today. Maintaining complex, interdependent and biodiverse ecosystems is the foundation of what underpins the resilience of ours and every species to threats such as man-made climate change. I think that we should also thank Councillor Dalziel for this thoughtful set of improvements to what is really a rather difficult subject to tackle by way of Council motion. I welcome the commitment to act this year and without delay, and I hope that the Executive Council will commit to reporting back to full Council verbally on progress later this year. But as Councillor Dalziel points out, that should not preclude a more rigorous commitment to renewing Council's 2006 Nature Conservation Strategy for enhancing biodiversity. This was a really significant piece of work, And I'd like to see something of the same scope brought through scrutiny later this year to be included in future budgets and become a core element of how the Council operates, in conjunction with our response to the climate emergency declared at our last meeting. And central to all of this should be how we show leadership on these issues. The issue of glyphosate weed killer is one that I've raised and on which Council is already conducting a limited trial, so I'm surprised by its omission from this motion. Finally, I'd like to highlight the inclusion of a proposed hedgerow strategy in Councillor Dalziel's amendment. This is an issue close to the hearts of people in Cambridge, and I'm certain of those in this chamber, and I hope that the Council will adopt it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Thornburn, you've got a 2-minute reply.
Yesterday, I attended the Zero Carbon Symposium, which was actually an idea started by Councillor Pippa Hayling. And it made it very clear that there are technological solutions to deal with climate change, as well as working in with human behaviour. And we could reach the 1.5 degrees temperature gain. But that's not enough. And the loss of biodiversity would still continue, and we would still end up in a disastrous situation. So without a doubt, climate change and biodiversity are linked, but they are also separate as well. And it is very important that we have a clear statement about biodiversity, and we acknowledge it's linked with climate change. So we want to change the way we live. We want to shake out our policies and go forward as a council to deliver what we can on the biodiversity, and that's why we prepared this statement. But we are already doing a lot of the things. We are stopping spraying herbicides where we can determine policy. That's already in place. We are already planting over 500 trees a year in Cambridge, and we are working. Our officers are working hard, and we have got grants to plant 10,000 trees, and we will be working with the councils around Cambridge going forward, because this is not something that we can do in isolation, as I've said. So I just want to wrap up to say there are many examples. We intend to work with the people of Cambridge, the officers across the way, the councillors across the way, and the other local authorities, and I hope you will support my motion. Thank you.
I will now go to the vote on the amendment. Please, can I see those in favour of the amendment? Okay, and those against?
So that's 22.
And any abstentions? One abstention. I now to the vote on the motion. Those in favour of the motion?
That's unanimous. Unanimous, thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, I now go to agenda item 2D, which, with the consent of the Council, has been altered and published as an additional item 13 to the agenda. Under the Council Procedure Rule 26, does Council agree to Councillor Tatala's alteration?
Can we have an explanation for the alteration?
I think what you'll find is the councillor will explain that when he does his speech. Okay? So is everyone agreeing? Yep, lovely. So I now call on Councillor Tatala to speak to the motion. You have 5 minutes between you and your seconder.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, my motion is predominantly based on the principles of equality of highest standard for all sections of the society, not an equality of minimal needs of the society. Madam, in early 2000, the Labour-led government decided to improve quality of health care in this country and invited non-EU nurses to work in this country. During this period, the regulator, Nursing and Midwifery Council, have not set up any English language competency. However, they were required to attend embassy interviews, employer interviews, so on and forth. But later, the NMC, the regulator, had moved this threshold and put a bar where the IELTS English language competency test. I have detailed report in my motion, which is annexed in my annexed and circulated to the members. There are 4 modules in this test: speaking, writing, listening, and reading. NMC requires a 78% marks of all 3 individual modules. When these nurses came to this country to undertake professional work, after qualifying the required medical qualification, they have come here to work, and they did work a considerable amount of time. I say somewhere about 4 to 15 years they have worked in our healthcare system. It could be in National Health Hospital or a private healthcare provider. But despite they have been working in this country, get trained from our system in this country, working with professionals, communicating with doctors, communicating with other staffs, ambulance crew, relatives, and patients, yet they have been restricted to practice the profession as a nurse because they cannot achieve this individual individual score of 7 points for every module. Let me draw other disturbing discrimination by the regulator. If a nurse who earned a British citizenship, he or he should be treated as a British citizen. But when it comes to become a nurse, the regulator sees them as a foreigner because they born in a non-EU state. We have estimated around 8,000 professionally qualified nurses working with our NHS or our private practice, trained with the system, looking after our sick and elderly people, contributing to our system, communicating effectively with our professionals. But there are 4 to 15 attempts have been made to pass this highly discriminatory regime of this exam. They have failed. But how on earth, or where on earth, when you work in this National Health Hospital for 15 years without any complaint, the regulator come and say to them, you cannot be a qualified nurse because your English is not competent enough. Madam Mayor, it should be looked, my motion should be looked at in conjunction with the recent concerns by medical professionals. BBC reported on September 2018, NHS vacancies, a national emergency. Chris Hobson, the head of an NHS provider, they were most worried about the vacancies. 11.8% of nurses posts were not filled, a shortage of somewhere around 42,000 nurses. NHS Improvement Chief Executive Ian Dalton acknowledged that the staff were extremely hard to cope. And I move this motion along with the the changes. Which was, the first one was sent a bit early. Later, I have slightly changed it. There is no substantive change in this document. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, could I declare an interest, please? I'm sorry I wasn't able to at the beginning. It moved on too quickly, but I will have to abstain on this motion because I work for Cambridge Assessment, who design and administer the IELTS test, so it would not be appropriate for me to take part or vote.
Okay, is there any debate? Sorry, the whole time went. Yeah. We do need a seconder for your seconder. Okay, thank you, Councillor McQueen. So, Councillor McQueen, what you could do is speak during the debate to do it that way. Okay. So, shall I put you on my list? Yes, please. Okay, lovely. Councillor Geary?
Madam Mayor, I work for Cambridge University and it's deeply related to the hospitals, so I have to abstain as well.
So I have Councillor McQueen, I have Councillor Massey, and Councillor Herbert. So Councillor McQueen, would you like to? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I would like to thank all the nurses who chose to come to the UK and work extremely hard, contributing to our society and our wonderful NHS. This is an issue of equal work for equal pay. When these nurses have come over to us and are working for our sick and elderly people, can we see this appalling inequality? More often than not, these nurses have families who rely on them, being the breadwinner. Therefore, you can see the detrimental impact this can have on their quality of life for all of their families. Agencies have already mentioned this has to be revisited. The regulators relaxed this with a resonant 6.5. This is still a 72% pass mark for those whom have worked in this country for many, many years. I support this motion and I urge all other members to do so. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Massey, you have 2 minutes.
I support this motion, and through my work as the Governor of Addenbrooke's for the city and a co-opted member of the Health Committee, I know all too well that we have a severe lack of nurses and indeed doctors now. We have trained, experienced medical staff working in our hospitals already, some for many, many years, but are unable to work as fully qualified nurses, but as healthcare assistants, unable to earn the slightly higher wages of nurses and unable to gain access to further their career. We are asking for more medical professionals to come here to work in the UK to fill our staffing gaps in the NHS, yet we already have the qualified and experienced staff working in our hospitals, and we need to support them to be able to pass their English proficiency score, as we should have been doing from the beginning, really. Furthermore to that, our GCSE pass mark, which in order to gain access to the nursing degree, you have to have an English GCSE of at least a grade C, which I think is a 6. So yeah, we're asking for 7 for anybody, 7.5 for anybody else who isn't from England. So I don't think that's very fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else want to join in the debate? I know you do, Councillor Herbert. Because I've got you down that you'll be speaking, but I just wanted to double-check nobody else. So, Councillor Herbert, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor, for managing lively debates this morning. We are so fortunate to have in Addenbrooke's one of the finest hospitals in the UK. And as is quite clear, it relies heavily on people from overseas. Part of our passion for remaining in Europe is linked to the fact that, there are so many Europeans working there. But I think it is the case that we've needed, because of the shortage of staff, because of the failure of successive governments to recruit or train health professionals, but also because people want to come to work in the UK, that we have attracted people from particularly the Asian subcontinent and from other countries. And they are some of the most caring and thoughtful people in Addenbrooke's, and we come across them when we visit or we go to see relatives who are in Addenbrooke's. But we do have a system which, whilst rightly, Madam Mayor, expecting that people have a level of English proficiency to be able to do these jobs, we have a system which discriminates. It has different standards for people on their English if they are born here to people who actually move here to work. And so I just want to put in the public domain my personal support for Baiju's motion, because we do have to correct what is discrimination. And there is within lots of professional institutions, and I would say it was sometimes, it did occur in the trades union movement in the past. It definitely occurs in a lot of employment places where there is significant bias depending on where you were born and the colour of your skin. And we have to remove both visible and hidden bias, and there is a bias here to be addressed. And this council has a voice, and it should be used. Thank you.
Councillor Tatala, you have 2 minutes of reply.
Mayor, when you look at the nurses shortage in this country, even recently in Cambridge University Hospital alone, somewhere about 92 nurses have come from non-EU states. I believe it is a huge waste of national money. Because when you have almost 8,000 plus nurses who have trained and they've been practicing, without considering them, simply catching a flight to India or Philippines is simple waste of money. And the people who are here, what a waste of human resources. And yet, I don't want to say much about it. I just want to give you one clarity. A certificate, someone who attended this exam last month sent me this certificate last night. For listening, she scored 9 out of 9. And reading, this woman scored 8.5 out of 9. And speaking 6.5, and writing 7.5. Yet she cannot practice as a nurse in this country. I request all members of this council to approve my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to the vote on the motion. Those in favour? Okay. Those against? Those abstentions?
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's 4. 4, Gary. 2. Councillor Geary and Councillor Somerville. Yeah. Okay, agenda item 3, written questions. Please note that the written questions and answers are contained within the information pack which has been circulated around the chamber and published on the web. I'll now close the meeting. The extraordinary meeting will start at 11, so please be back here for 11 o'clock. And there's tea and coffee outside for you to have. I'll see you soon. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Prior to the meeting commencing, I will ask David Muller to say a few words, the chaplain.
Team with the wonderful Penny and Sam, Deputy Mayor Jerry, and all those who are involved in the back room. I have learned what a wonderfully diverse city Cambridge is, and I have been inspired and encouraged by many of you in this chamber. But perhaps the most important things that I have learned is that one person can make a difference. Nigel used his time as mayor with great effect, but the reason that the church was full on Monday with such a wide range of people was not just because he was a great mayor. It's because he enjoyed people, championed the underdog, and was willing to have fun and include anyone he could in the enjoyment of life. He didn't wait to be mayor to make a difference. That's what he always sought to do. Now I have learned that Nigel isn't alone in wanting to make a difference. I know through conversations I've had with you, here in the Guildhall, on my doorstep, out in the marketplace, that you too have a real desire to make this city a better place for all. I am thankful for all that you do, for all of you who sit in this chamber, in whatever role, and that you are willing to serve in the way that you do. So in my last time as the Mayor's Chaplain, I would like to encourage you to keep on making a difference. In the words of Adrian's sermon on the memorial service on Monday, I would like to encourage you to keep on building those bridges. Build bridges between the city and the university, between those who have and those who have not, between innovation and diversity and tradition. Build bridges across the chamber as we seek to build the common good. So this morning, I'd like to invite you once again to stop. Lay down the distractions of the day and the full agenda, just for a moment, and pause. Pause using your senses and your imagination, and for those who wish to pray in the quietness. Where do these bridges need to be built? And what can we do to help one another cross? I saw the holy city coming down out of heaven from God, and I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eye. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. And the first things have passed away." May God bless you, and may you discover the bridge to him who loves you and leads you to life. Amen.
Thank you, David. I will now ask Council to consider recommendations by the Civic Affairs Committee on the 13th of May 2019 to appoint former Councillor Caroline Hart as an honorary councillor. A separate agenda has been sent out to councillors. There will be a short speeches at this point from Councillor Macpherson and Councillor Johnson. So, Councillor Macpherson, can I ask you?
Good morning once more, everyone. You'll be thrilled and delighted to know it will be a very short speech. I feel very tall standing up here on this platform, but we considered it was much easier than removing the platform all the time. So if I topple over, will someone catch me? That would be very nice. I see that, unfortunately, Caroline is not actually here with us this morning, which is a bit of a shame. She's perhaps not been able to make it due to her work commitments. But just a couple of words on her behalf. Caroline was elected in 2002. And during that time, she was a member of a number of committees. She made a very strong commitment and a very strong contribution both to this council and to her community as a whole. I'm going to read the committees off. I don't normally read stuff, but I'm going to read this in case I forget something. She was on the Planning Committee and the Licensing, Civic Affairs, and the City Centre Development Scrutiny Committee, mostly for the Grand Arcade. I remember that quite well. She was also an East Area Committee, and something I didn't know, she was on there right from the start of the area committees. So right, just as they started, she was on it, and so all the way through her tenure here. But I do remember her as Deputy Mayor in 2011-12. I remember that very well because those of you who know Caroline will know that she's a shy individual. And this was a really big undertaking for her to be up here. Not on this platform, quite as high as this. But this was a big undertaking for Caroline, and she carried that off with enormous grace. And it was quite an undertaking for her to stand up and actually make speeches to people. And she did that so very, very well. And I remember when she came to switch on the Christmas lights at Cherry Hinton, she stayed a very long time. And I think she probably went round and spoke to just about everyone. And we have lots and lots of people turn up to that. And she spent, you remember that, won't you? She spent long time actually speaking to everyone, all the stall holders, absolutely everybody. And she made a really, really good speech to the people of Cherry Hinton. And they really felt that she wanted to be there. It wasn't just another occasion to her. And I think that she made people feel that way wherever she went. And I think she did a really, really stunning job of being the Deputy Mayor. And I think that she was, well, I know she was very pleased to be nominated as an honorary councillor. I knew that she would be, and I know she's very sorry not to be here, but I know time is short. So I will love to recommend Caroline Hart as honorary councillor to this council. I know that she will be delighted if everyone can agree on that. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. It gives me great pleasure to second the proposition to make Caroline Hart an honorary councillor of Cambridge. I can think of fewer better candidates for this title. Caroline was a servant of her local area and of the city. Before becoming councillor in 2002, she amassed an impressive range of roles and positions within the Abbey Ward: an administrator for the East Barnwell Community Centre, a children's worker for Christ the Redeemer Church, a volunteer at the local Cub Scout group, a governor for the Fields Children's Centre, and secretary of the Fen Ditton Local History Society, to name a few. There's a consistent theme running through all of these roles, like a golden thread: a passion for people, standing up for a strong, engaged civic society. Caroline's thirst for doing right by her local community, making a positive contribution for others, is what made her such a natural as a councillor. Caroline, as councillor, I think, saw herself as contributing more through deeds than just words. Caroline would readily admit that she was far more comfortable following up a bit of casework on the number 3 bus or at Cambridge United. Herself, husband Bruce and son Robert are avid Hughes fans and were season ticket holders for many, many years, and making a grand piece of oratory here in this chamber. She was very proud to represent Abbey, and I know she was extremely proud, as Councillor Macpherson alluded to earlier, to have been Deputy Mayor in the 2011-2012 municipal year. It was a shame that she didn't become Mayor in 2012. I made my maiden speech here 7 years ago, proposing her to be Mayor, but I didn't make her love our city or its institutions like this council any less. She was bailiff on several occasions through the years and was always keen to participate in the big occasions like the Mayor's Big Day Out, Midsummer Fair, Reach Fair and other civic occasions. Caroline used the office of councillor the way it ought to be used, to build bridges and to speak up for the common good. She is a worthy recipient of this honour as a result.
I will now ask for a vote on the recommendation. Please can we have a vote on Councillor Caroline Hart to become an honorary councillor? Okay. That concludes the business of the extraordinary meeting. I now hand over to the Deputy Mayor to chair the start of the annual council meeting. Councillor McPherson.
Nothing like being surprised, is there? For the item, first item on the agenda, I call for nominations for the office of Mayor for the ensuing municipal year. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Smith.
I would like to nominate Councillor Jerry Bird.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor
I'd like to
Cantrell.
second the proposal.
Any other nominations? You were lucky then. Yeah. Councillor Smith, would you like to support your recommendation?
I would. How long do I have for this? Is it a kind of just a, however long? Right. I'll be brief, but take enough time to do justice to Jerry.
God, that sounds good. Thank you ever so much. I thought that was it.
Thank you so much. It is an enormous honour to propose Councillor Bird as Mayor today. The first time I met Councillor Bird was back in 2014 in her previous tenure as Mayor. I don't know if she remembers, but it was at the opening of a refurbished room at Ross Street Community Centre. And what struck me was not only her kindness to me as a new candidate, as a new activist, but her kindness to everyone, her sense of humour, and her genuine interest in every single person in the room. And that impression proved to be absolutely correct. Jerry is generous of spirit, never puts anyone down, and fights with passion for issues she cares about. It's why she won a national award for her work for disability equality. And it's why she's known in her own ward as someone who fights hard for the rights of her residents. In fact, I'd come across Jerry before, but I didn't realise it because she was the person who fought so hard to ensure that we retained accessible, good quality toilets in Lion Yard. I wasn't involved in politics at that time, but I'd certainly heard of the campaign and was one of the 11,000 people who signed the petition that Jerry had set up. She's still the same today. Because of her hard work with officers and her tenacity, we have an ABLE policy which keeps our street more free of clutter. She fights hard at every corner. She fights in group, she fights for her residents, she fights in public for important issues. And she fights personally too. I wasn't aware until I was doing my work for this speech that a few years ago Jerry was extremely ill and her family were told that they should expect the worst. And Jerry battled through, and here she is today. Now, all of us are aware today that Jerry is already carrying out the role of Mayor in the most tragic of circumstances. And we remember Nigel, our colleague, our friend, our comrade, whose memorial service we held on Monday. Today is the day that Nigel would have passed the baton to the new Mayor. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn to say that I'm sure he would have been delighted that we are proposing Jerry today. Last time Jerry was Mayor, she attended 521 mayoral engagements in 50 weeks. Knowing her, she's already got a plan to beat her own achievements this time around. And I know that she will work tirelessly for our city, with her characteristic humour, kindness and passion for the marginalised. It is with huge pleasure that I therefore ask the Chamber to support our proposal that Councillor Jerry Bird becomes Mayor for the next mayoral year.
Councillor Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wholeheartedly second the nomination as Councillor Bird for Mayor. The Mayor, as the first citizen of our city, requires many skills to perform their duties, from charm to patience to a sense of humour to openness to all, and also a large amount of time that they give. And I know that, Madam Mayor, that you have all these characteristics and more. But one of the things that our first citizen is very rarely required to call on is resilience, stepping into the breach at a time of need. And we witness this characteristic in spades when Jerry, earlier this year, has been mentioned, stepped in at a time of need in tragic circumstances. And that is why I think you will make a fantastic mayor in your forthcoming year. And that is why, Madam Mayor, you've made a fantastic mayor in the short period that you've had to step forward to perform the role in the last few months. So I wholeheartedly second your nomination.
Can I see a show of hands, please? In that case, there being no other nominations, I declare Councillor Bird Mayor of the City of Cambridge for the ensuing municipal year 2019-20.
I'm just asking Councillor Bird or the Mayor to sign the declaration of acceptance of office.
I declare that I take office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it accordingly to the best of my judgment and ability. Well, thank you, everybody. There are so many people for me to thank today. Those include my colleagues for electing me as your mayor today, the proposer and seconder for their kind words, and to the people of East Chesterton Ward for their behalf in their belief, in me over the years. Thank you too to my family, councillors, civic colleagues for the support that you will be providing Alan and I in our special year. Although the wonderful achievements of our processor will be a tough act to follow, I nevertheless pledge my energy and my effort to achieve another successful year supporting our civic office, council and most importantly the communities of Cambridge. I was born on the 11th of November 1955 in the Magdalen home in Cork, Republic of Ireland. At the age of 10 months, I contracted polio and admitted to hospital where I remained until I was 7 years old. Upon leaving hospital, it wasn't possible to find my mum as she had been deported to England. The nuns, however, managed to actually trace her living in Cambridge in Histon Road, believe it or not. So I was brought over to the city by the nuns. Unfortunately, the reunion didn't work out and I was taken to Midfields Children's Home in Oakerton for fostering. The Church of Our Lady in the English Martyrs on Hills Road, Cambridge, issued a notice a disabled child was in need of a home and a couple came forward to foster me. They formally adopted me when I was 12 years old, actually in this building. And for the first time I was able to enter mainstream school, St Bede's, Birdwood Road, Cambridge, where I learned to read and write. So at 12, I couldn't read or write, so I went to the school and they were really great. I left school at the age of 15 after 3 years formal schooling, and then my life changed. I had two wonderful daughters, one who's here today, Anne-Marie, and who gave me 8 beautiful grandchildren and 1 beautiful great-granddaughter who's 4 years old. In my adult life, I had been a constant campaigner for the rights of disabled people in order to bring change and independence. I worked for Disability Cambridgeshire and have been involved with a number of organisations to give support and advice to disabled people for over 39 years, and I'm the Cambridge City Council Disability Lead. Who would have believed I would become a mayor, first citizen of Cambridge, but here I am, and my determination has got me here. I would like to thank the Deacon Ian Murray, Chester Methodist Church, Green End Road, for agreeing to be my mayor's chaplain. Thank you, Ian. And I hope that you will enjoy your new role as chaplain and the satisfaction about being part of civic life brings. Thank you, David, for your outstanding work over the last year. You have been a great support to me, the council, Nigel and Jenny. And I wrote to the Bishop to extend my thanks to you for your contribution to the council this year. I would also like to thank Sergeant Katie Ruby for committing so much time and energy throughout the mayoral year. She has been a credit to the 104 Squadron. Sergeant Katie Ruby, as the Mayor's Cadet, has undertaken many duties, and we hope we have found the year fulfilling. Well done, Katie. I want to continue to make a difference as our first citizen, and although there are so many worthy organisations in Cambridge, I will be supporting Rowing and King's Hedges Family Support Project. Rowing is a Cambridge-based charity and arts centre for people with learning disabilities and physical disabilities. They provide a safe, creative and welcoming environment where they use the arts as a tool to bring people together, break down issues of social inclusion and improve health and well-being. The King's Hedges Family Support Project aims to help parents to feel confident to make the choices that are important to them. The King's Hedges Family Support tries to help to reduce feeling of isolation and increase of sense of community, and offer a high quality, safe place to play, relax and talk. The King's Hedges Family Support Project works actively with partners and connects families to them, ensuring that they have access to relevant information and advice. I will uphold the rules of procedure firmly and fairly, upholding our Constitution, and will enthusiastically in asking all members in the Chamber to join me in this. And so I ask myself, how will the success of my year as the Mayor be judged? Certainly, I hope that I will be discharged my commitments professionally, whether it is by chairing meetings in this chamber fairly and firmly, or whether it is visiting and speaking at many community events that I will attend. Undoubtedly, it will be a success to the predecessor by being an ambassador for this council and all that good it does and strives to do. And finally, it will be my pleasure and privilege to perform these tasks with good humour, good grace and gratitude. My family, our civic office support team, and all those who help me to work for the honour and well-being of our town in the important year ahead to make a beneficial difference. Thank you very much. Okay, I now call for nominations for the appointment of Deputy Mayor. Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to nominate Councillor Russ McPherson to this position. Russ is one of only 3 in this chamber that were part of the class of 2004, which of course those 3 members of regard as a noble institution. Councillor Cantrell being the 3rd. I particularly want to compliment and explain why Russ is fitted for this position, but first I just want to congratulate you and also in doing so also extend my thanks to the person called Reverend Dave in the service on Monday for his contribution. So yes, it hasn't been an easy time in terms of Nigel's death, and it's right that we establish a strong team on the dais. Russ, and I've got a bit of history for Russ, as a little lesson of history, as one of our former colleagues used to say. Russ says that his family was so poor that he was knitted. Russ is, despite the fact that he's living in Cambridge, his parentage is half Australian and half Scottish. So he's more international perhaps than he sometimes infers. Like me, I was born in Edinburgh, Russ lived in Edinburgh, and Russ is, obviously bears that in his contributions, including championing the unique tartan that is the Cambridge tartan, and also adding considerable grace and colour to events using his skills as a piper, both of the Northumbrian pipes and the Scottish pipes. So Russ is an enthusiastic musician, has been a huge contributor to this council, is passionate about his community of Cherry Hinton. But if you actually just look at what Russ stands for and what he does, it's difficult to realise how he can actually fit the council in. First of all, and this is a role that he should really be given huge tribute for. When you consider Cambridge Regional College, it's a community of thousands of full-time students, of part-time students, and also apprentices. A number of inevitably, with that scale of a community, there's quite a lot of troubled teenagers. And there are definitely a number of people that need considerable support. So how I would describe it is that Russ is the 3rd parent for a lot of people that go through that place. And in his role, not just of liaison, but just being there, he has provided huge support. And I'm sure that there are people out, not just in Cambridge, but in Cambridgeshire that can attest for that. And just look at some of the other things that Russ contributes. Russ, South Area Committee, I know, can be a very dramatic place. But on one occasion, when there was a keenly contested planning application, a man who was really passionate and felt deeply about what was happening ended up having a heart attack during a South Area Committee meeting, and Russ was there to help save his life, and got an award from the East Anglian Ambulance Trust for that work. Russ champions all aspects of the emergency services. He is, I think, now president of St John's Ambulance, having that honour because of his, not just because he is there, but because he's contributed to MAGPAS, contributed to the work with the police, contributed to a whole load of projects that take a huge amount of effort. On this council, in addition to chairing South Area Committee, the thing I would single Russ out for as his contribution is passing through his integrity and his principles into the standards that we operate to. I believe that there should be a stronger standard system, and there are organisations outside this place that I've contributed and made points about recently, where I believe the standards that should be expected of public organisations are not being met. Were there to be standards issues in this council, I would be confident that Russ is exactly the right person to lead on that, because it is right that we, all of us, are expected to set and achieve the highest probity and other standards of integrity. So Russ has added hugely in his time to this council. He has been mayor before, as Jerry has, but we have no hesitation in proposing Russ as deputy mayor for the coming year, including given his year as mayor in 2009 and 2010. And I know he and Carol did a wonderful job then, and I won't necessarily call them the dream team, Jerry and Ross, but I think we are fortunate to have such a powerful team to lead the council, to be the first citizens together for the coming year, and also hopefully to keep this place in order. So I have no hesitation in nominating Ross McPherson to be Deputy Mayor for the coming year. Yeah.
Councillor Moore, did you want to say anything?
Yes, congratulations. Thank you. I would like to second the proposal for Councillor Russ McPherson as Deputy Mayor for the coming council year. As we've seen, when Russ stood up to be Deputy Mayor in February after the tragic and untimely death of Councillor Nigel Gawthorpe, he will do an admirable job as Deputy Mayor. Russ has been a dedicated councillor of this council for 19 years, being re-elected by the people of Cherry Hinton 4 times, giving much of his time and energy to the residents of our city. As the security manager at Cambridge Regional College, as has been mentioned, Councillor McPherson is used to overseeing the safety, security and well-being of thousands of young people from our region. A role which will no doubt put him in good stead to stand in for the Mayor when needed, and, if necessary, to keep us all in this chamber in check. In his time as a councillor, Russ has focused on the running of the council as the lead councillor for standards and the chair of civic affairs. Outside the council, Russ is not only a very skilled first aider, but also an avid musician and player of the bagpipes, regularly representing this council at the Remembrance Day wreath-laying service. Russ has always been a very friendly, welcoming, and perhaps most importantly, calm councillor, as there is not much that will ruffle his feathers, as we have already seen from this morning's meeting. All in all, I know that Russ will make a wonderful Deputy Mayor, and I sincerely hope that all councillors in this chamber will support us in this.
Are there any other nominations? No? I declare that Councillor McPherson, Deputy Mayor of the City of Cambridge for the ensuing municipal year. Congratulations. Thank you. Councillor McPherson is now going to sign the declaration. Be invested with the badge, but I think you've already got the badge, haven't you?
I think after that, a number of people will be absolutely thrilled and delighted I've not brought the pipes today. There will be no tunes in here today. Had I thought about it, it might have been a bit of fun, mightn't it? But I'm not going to say too many words because it's the Mayor's Day. So thank you for all those kind comments. I was beginning to wonder, was that really me or was that somebody else? So thank you very much for all those very kind comments. And all I will say is that I will do the best I possibly can to support Jerry in her mayoralty and all her undertakings in her role, and anything I can do for her and the council as Deputy Mayor, that I will do. And I think that's enough for me.
Anyway, congratulations, but you don't know what you've let yourself in for. That's my deputy. Anyway, okay, can we go to agenda item 3, confirmation of the minutes? May I approve as correct record of the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 21st of February 2019? A copy of the minutes can be found in the agenda starting on page 5. Is everyone happy for me to sign?
Yep.
Thank you.
Delighted.
Okay. We now go on to agenda item 4. To note that the returning officer's report that's following has been elected to the office of councillor. I would like to welcome councillors who have won seats at the local elections held on the 2nd of May. Abbey Half-Davis, Castle Greg Chadwick, Coleridge Grace Hadley, King's Hedges Alex Collis, Market Katie Pora, is that correct? And Petersfield Mike Davey, and Trumpington Peter Lord and Dan Somerville. Okay, so congratulations to you all and welcome. I sincerely hope that you will enjoy the work on behalf of the council. And I would also like to congratulate the councillors who were re-elected. So give yourself a clap. I'm clapping myself. I now go to agenda item 5, Mayor to say, to note as said in my speech that Deacon Ian Murray will be my chaplain. I look forward to the year, Ian, and I hope you do as well, with Alan. Okay, agenda item 6, resolution of thanks to the outgoing mayor. Councillor Price will move a resolution of thanks to Nigel Gawthrop and Jenny Wood. This council expresses its appreciation of the manner in which the duties of the mayor were discharged by Nigel Gawthrop and Jenny Wood, and that the common seal be affixed to a copy of this resolution. Councillor Price, please move to the motion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations on your elevation once again. Madam Mayor, it's a... excuse me, my voice is not that great at the moment. Some of you may be pleased to know. It is with a mixture of pride and sadness that I move this vote of thanks to Nigel Gawthrop and Jenny Wood as the outgoing mayor and mayoress. The pride at recognising the work that they undertook in the role, but sadness that Nigel is not here to learn what others have said about his mayoralty. Not morality. It was my pleasure and privilege, Madam Mayor, this time last year to propose Councillor Nigel Gawthrop, friend, fellow trades unionist and, of course, fellow King's Hedges Ward councillor as Mayor of Cambridge for the municipal year 2019 to 20. Nigel took to the office of Mayor like a duck to water, and together with Jenny as Mayoress, they made a wonderful team. He chose his charities, the Alzheimer's Society and the Red Hen Project, and did everything he could to raise awareness of both. He was not afraid to push the boundaries as mayor, and I think one classic example was the bikers' ride to Addenbrooke's Hospital to distribute gifts to sick children in hospital over Christmas. Now, Nigel was not the first mayor to go on the ride, Madam Mayor, but such was his desire to raise awareness of it, he decided to lead it on his beloved Harley Davidson, dressed as Santa Claus, complete with the mayoral chains. Now, I know from conversations with Nigel afterwards just how much he loved that ride. And top of his list of priorities for that was that more people recognise the good work done by the local motorcycling community to help sick children. So I think that must go down as a roaring success. Pun intended. I was present at 3 events run by the Red Hen Project as a trustee, where Nigel and Jenny were both present. And the first was at a course where people were learning to cook on a budget. And he was keen to learn about the course and sat down to eat the results, meatballs and spaghetti, with the families and to listen to them. Next came the children's Christmas party, when, once again, dressed as Santa Claus with the mayoral chain peeking out behind the long white beard, he was immediately putting everyone at ease and talking with the children and parents before handing out Christmas gifts to the excited youngsters. Now, the final event was attending one of their regular coffee mornings run by the Red Hen Project for families, where again he spent time speaking to the children and their parents, and he answered all their questions about the role of mayor. From Macmillan's coffee mornings, where I understand he attended more than any mayor before him, that's not a challenge, Jerry, to the Chinese dragon boat race, in which his competitive side showed through, and the visiting of a great many care homes where he would give lots of his time to talk to residents and to listen to them. Nigel ensured the Office of Mayor continued to have a high profile in the city. Madam Mayor, there have been many tributes paid to Nigel from all those groups and individuals that he met during his time as Mayor, which I think you will agree is testament to the great job of representing the city that Nigel did. Nigel was first and foremost a builder of bridges, as we heard at the memorial service earlier this week. He loved this city, wanted the best for it and its residents. He was a wonderful servant of the city and its residents, and we are all proud to have served with him. Thank you, Councillor Gawthorpe, for everything you did in your role as Mayor of Cambridge. We will miss you, and you'll be a hard act to follow. Madam Mayor, I move.
I call on Councillor Bick to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've spoken about Nigel at our last meeting, and I don't want to risk devaluing those sentiments by simply repeating them. But suffice it to say now that I am, as Councillor Price, proud to second this vote of thanks to Nigel and to Jenny, and to do so with the support of my group. Nigel was tragically taken away from us while doing a splendid job as our mayor, and that was before he finished what I'm sure he could have offered more to. He was putting his all into the role and was adding his unique character and colour to the mayoralty, some of that which we saw those weeks ago at his remarkable and moving funeral. And in bringing those to the mayoralty, he was clearly being supported by Jenny. So the thank you from me to you both is deeply felt from this side of the chamber.
Can I see a show of hands for this motion? Jenny, you're going to reply? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to all for this resolution. No, Jerry will do an excellent job this year, and thank you for stepping into the breach, and Russ. And I also want to thank so much to David and Katie for the support that they've given me in the last few months. And throughout the year, of course, Nigel, we know, absolutely loved being mayor. You know, he was in his element. I've got this picture now of a bridge coming from King's Hedges, in fact a whole load of bridges all around Cambridge, ending up in the centre. And Nigel's going from one bridge to the other, and he's standing on it saying, come on, come on, you know, and walk it. Or probably I'm going, come on, come on. And he's just welcoming people and getting people over those bridges so that they all feel part of Cambridge and the centre of Cambridge, the Guildhall, the university, then I'm allowed to say that, so that they all can play their part here. I mean, you said something about his morality. Well, I think his morality was all right. So, yeah, thank you. That's all I'm going to say now. Thank you.
Yeah, I just say a few words. Jenny, I've got the resolution here. Russ is going to pass it to you. Mayor's announcements. These are set on in the information pack on page 23. I now go to agenda item 8. I have nominations to fill the 4 vacancies for bailiffs. The nominations are Councillor Massey, Thornborough, Pippas and Page Croft. Does the council agree to these appointments? Agreed? Lovely. I now go to our agenda item 9 to consider recommendation of committees for adoption. So item 9A, the appointment of committees for 2019-20. The recommendations are set out on pages 31 to 34 and an update in the information pack on page 47. Is there any debate? No? Okay. I will now go to the vote. Please, can I see those in favour of this recommendation? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 9B. Nomination of chairs and vice chairs for 2019-20. We now turn to the appointment of chairs and vice chairs for 2019-20. The nominations are included in page 35 of your agenda pack. Is there any debate? No? Does the council approve the nominations? Okay, all right. I was going to put my hand up, but never mind. Okay, so item 9C, the Constitution amendments, which can be found on pages 37 to 60 of your agenda packs, and as an update in the information pack on pages 25 to 29. The recommendation is on page 37 to 38 of your agenda. Councillor Herbert wishes to explain to the council the changes to executive portfolios and lead councillor. Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will be brief. So, in the changes that you've got here, we're creating 2 different portfolios. Firstly, a portfolio for planning and open spaces, and secondly, a portfolio for transport and community safety. And we're also revising the environment portfolio, including to give it clear responsibility for measures to change the city in terms of climate change and to reduce emissions, both by reducing the emissions but also adaptation measures that are going to be needed. In introducing that, I would also, Mayor, like to thank executive councillors who've made major contributions in the last year. In addition to those standing again, I'd like to particularly thank Councillor Kevin Price for his contribution on housing and homelessness, and also Councillor Kevin Blencoe, who I hope will return to this council, for his contributions on planning. In terms of firstly, the planning and open spaces portfolio. In addition to this shifting that responsibility of open spaces to the same committee, it underscores the work, Mayor, that we referenced in the motion that was agreed unanimously earlier on today, that biodiversity and the natural environment is a central part of planning, and that we have to bridge the management of open spaces, the future of aspects like the River Cam, and just overall our view of the city. And with the prospect of a significant investment in trees and various other projects, it has been Councillor Thornborough's mission to engage people. We do need to have the community far more engaged in developing the biodiversity of this city, and we can do more ourselves. I'm sure there'll be plenty of carping from those who think that they could do a better job, but I do think that there are opportunities, whether it's in housing, whether it's in our open spaces, particularly in the area which is directly the County Council's responsibility of the verges and just generally the environment that we inherit. So that is the reason for that focus. And then in terms of transport and community safety, we do need to give added emphasis to not just transport, but the whole range of issues in this city. We've got choices to make about how we configure the city centre. We clearly have a linkage between transport and the air that we breathe in this city. The work that is being done by outside organisations needs to have a stronger representation. So that's why we've made those changes. In consequence, there are also some minor changes, not necessarily to those that inherit them, but there are a movement of a number of responsibilities. And so just on a couple of details there, one of the details is that on community safety, that still reports to the Environment and Communities Environment and Community Scrutiny Committee. Another detail I just want to emphasise is the importance of street lighting in this city, and that the logical place for in our view, is this also reports to the Executive Councillor leading on community safety, albeit that street lighting is largely a County Council function. Further changes are that that there is a responsibility in relation to tackling climate change, which we will add further to in the wording that we will add to the respective obligations of the other executive councillors. And then finally, Mayor, that we are retaining 2 deputy leaders. We believe that that will give us advantages. There is some complementary roles involved. So Councillor Sargent is deputy leader. He doesn't have a specific executive councillor portfolio, but there is a significant number of initiatives and work that we will need, and I will need assistance on. And similarly, Councillor Smith retains the position of deputy leader, leads on communications and also on engagement by the council. And so we will be following that through this year. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bick, did you want to say anything on this? No? Okay, lovely. Is there any debate? No? So, Councillor McPherson, did you want to say anything?
Nothing to add, Madam Mayor.
Okay, lovely. We'll now go to the vote. Please, can I see those in favour of the recommendations?
Okay, that's great. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. We now move to the special meetings of committees to deal with the annual appointments. Members of the following committees have been issued with special meeting agendas, which can be found in the information pack. Civic Affairs, Environment and Community, Planning and Transport, Licensing and Strategy and Resources. The appointments to these committees and outside bodies are being taken en bloc. So do members of the committees and executive councillors agree and note the appointments set out in the special meeting agenda?
Agreed.
Agreed? Lovely. Thank you. Okay, so now go to agenda item 11, the annual statement. We turn to the annual statement under Council Procedure Rule 3.2.1.14. I call on Councillor Herbert to speak for no more than 10 minutes on the Labour Group's priorities for action and objectives for the forthcoming municipal year. The Labour Group annual statement is included on pages 61 to 74 of your agenda packs. Councillor Herbert, please address the Council.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to talk about our priorities for the year and do it relatively briefly. There's one typographical error which the observant might have spotted. There's an error in the title, Mayor, where it says 5. In fact, we're committing ourselves to 4 commitments, and there was an error in the title. So it's 4, not 5, although I'm sure we could add 1 or 2 during the year. In terms of the 4 commitments that are in front of you, they really just focus on the 4 issues that we are targeting and we will continue to target. We do not sit on the past record of 5 years leading this council. We sit on what we're about to do in the coming year. And the focal issues are these. The first issue is that we continue to be determined to tackle inequality in health and the difference between some of the areas that you represent, Mayor, and some of the more affluent areas of the city. The particular issue that it's central to people in this city that they can actually afford to live here. And so the way that we pay £10 an hour as a minimum wage and the way that we campaign and seek the support of other organisations to pay £9 is because the biggest central thread of inequality in this city is income. And the income that has effectively driven up the house prices so that many people in this city cannot live here anymore is also the income that is needed just simply to survive. So we hope that other employers, and we hope will follow the example of people like the university, including subsidiary organisations linked to the university. We don't see that any organisation that can afford to should duck their responsibility. They are effectively making their own employees poorer, and that isn't acceptable. In terms of the second priority, we have, and I think despite Councillor Cantrell at times carping and saying you're never going to deliver the 500 council homes, that programme, thanks to an excellent team of officers and the work that's been put in, is on track. We have purchased the Cromwell Road site. If people are on the train, they can see that those buildings coming down and those council homes will be built. Each of those proposed areas of significant council housing also includes community facilities. So we are determined that these are low carbon, these are integrated, successful communities, that the quality of the build is good, that the integration of the community with new housing is achieved. Homelessness, similarly, is a major challenge in our city. Our excellent team in the housing advice section, I think, helped 2,000 people in a single year with homelessness advice. It's a mark that we have this challenge, and again it is driven because of the need, as has been evidenced also in southern Cambridge, that we have to develop and deliver affordable housing in all of the new developments that occur. Street homelessness is particularly visible. There's an awful lot of initiatives that are devoted to it, but we do intend during this year to review how effective it is, because all of the different partners need to come together. And it is of great sadness when we hear reports that, for instance, the County Council is cutting £40,000 from an organisation like Jimmy's. Jimmy's, the organisation that is the front line in this city for people who have got nowhere to go, and the County Council decides that they can suddenly just say, sorry, £40,000, a full-time member of staff, a whole lot of resources is going to be taken away from an organisation like that. So we do need to look at homelessness, and as part of that, Rather than just making what I've described as Vera Lynn commitments to further housing, don't know where, don't know when, just say, oh, let's build another 1,000 homes. Oh, where's it going to go? Well, we don't know about that. That doesn't matter. All that matters is we've got a line for a newsletter. We have to evidence where are the next 500, where are the next 1,000 council homes going to go in Cambridge after 2022. Clearly, we've got opportunities in sites like the northeast site, but we need to do more. Commitment 3, which has been discussed in part this morning, but we need to go further on it, is exactly how we operate and deliver on climate change. It's always the opportunity, again, for people to say, oh, we can do this, again, it's very easy, let's just set 2030 without any real idea of how we're going to get there. It's no surprise that both South Cambridgeshire, which is Liberal Democrat control in the city, have said that their guarantee is to deliver on 2050. But we've gone further than that in our commitment, not because we yet have the policies through the council system for 2030, but because we do want to have the kind of partnership that we need with young people who are going to inherit a planet that's been badly damaged by my generation. I would hope that many of us in my generation can evidence that we made a difference, but we certainly haven't done enough. Of the issues of air quality, as I look at Councillor Martinelli, and I'm reminded of the people who end up in Addenbrooks because of the poor air quality that is in this city, particularly in people who actually live in lower cost housing, which is often in the most polluted parts of cities. So the Cambridge Climate Charter, a commitment to engage, a commitment to work through with people who've got lots of really clever and interesting ideas, so that we look at the design of new housing, we look at insulation of housing, we look at the whole transport agenda, we look at each of the agendas, and then we make promises. We don't make promises before we've actually worked out how we're going to deliver that. And that's a big job for the Executive Councillor who's going to lead on that. So we do need to do it on a bigger geography, and it was to have a group of 25 people, including 12 very impressive 12-year-olds, including the author of this book, which I'm happy to lend out to people, a published author at the age of 12, a Cambridge child with a passion to tackle the climate emergency. We will work with people, we will be ambitious, and we will ensure that we're in a different place in 12 months on these issues than we are now, partly because we have focused so much on our own challenges that we now need to evidence not just that, but move on outwards. And it was gratifying when we had a discussion, and we had a really effective discussion in here the other evening, albeit that it took our hallkeepers by surprise, because we were expecting 3, Madam Mayor, and 25 turned up. But their voices were all the more powerful for that. What they are actually seeking is a citizens' assembly on a broader geography. So they see our role, they see the role of South Cambridgeshire, but if you look at Cambridgeshire, you look at its inequality, you look at the issues that relate to climate change, they have to be tackled across the whole geography. So, for instance, we would like to see the Mayor reverse the decision to abolish the post of Director of Sustainability, which is a quite critical job on that geography. So climate change will be a central priority. And then about protecting services. I can remember administrations in the past complaining in this chamber about a 0.5% cut in their funding. Well, we no longer get any core grant, and the government is always to be worried about when it starts talking about a fair funding review. The people opposite, the members opposite may say, oh, we can do far better than you lot, and we're going to challenge you all the way through the year. Well, we could do a lot better if your MPs hadn't voted for such damaging austerity year after year after year, because you set the pattern between 2010 and 2015 that has damaged particularly the county council. We look upstairs we look up the hill at the county council, and their services have been savaged. And now what's happening is that the county council actually wants to nick our money because the government says that's the only way that you can actually get any more funding. So we will resist those financial challenges, but we do have to look at our services. We do have to review how we do things. There are huge opportunities working with our customers and on IT some of which we will have to work collaboratively on. The party opposite is very concerned about changes to planning. Well, it's regularly said, rightly, that our planning system doesn't use IT nearly well enough. To give the right access, we have to have that. So there is plenty in our statement in the 14 pages, Mayor. There are challenges ahead, and we will be working hard on them. But we will deliver on tackling inequality, on building housing, caring for the homeless, on tackling the climate emergency, and on protecting the vital services that people need. And we will lead this council just as well next year as we have for the last 5.
The Liberal Democrats Group annual statement is included in the information pack on page 49. I call on Councillor Bick for the Liberal Democrat Group to address Council. You have up to 10 minutes, Councillor Bick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to quickly congratulate you in your reappointment and to congratulate and welcome all the new eight new members on equally split on both sides of the chamber. We look forward to getting to know those on your side as we work with you. We're pleased to return to the Council from the elections with an enlarged presence, which strengthens our role as opposition. Our agenda, consequently, for the year reflects our role as challenger and scrutineer of the administration, which remains in power. Now, if words alone were how you measured an annual statement, the sheer length of Labour's annual statement today would be put it right up there with the very best. But words seem to have become the only currency which this administration is truly proficient in. In the real world, the Labour group on this council has shown that it is consistently caught on the wrong side of every big argument and behind every major curve that is really important to this city. On climate change, we find you happy to pass a motion declaring a climate emergency, but unwilling to recognise the evidence-based need for an earlier target for results than everyone thought before, and unwilling even to review the Council's pre-existing climate change strategy. And we find you eager to support our suggestion to eliminate single-use plastics from the Council, while sometime afterwards still sending out documents to councillors in these. How did that happen? Incidentally, we proposed at this same council meeting a year ago a motion which achieved the promise of a report on waste reduction within the next 12 months, which we're still waiting for. On housing, we find you unambitious and late to the party on opportunities to really address the city's housing shortage, which needs sustainable sites to build on, long-term vision and leadership from this council. From our perspective, addressing the shortage of housing and the sellers and the landlords market that it creates ought to be the focus of the council's efforts to reduce inequality. But what we've had is a history of foot dragging in relation to Anglia Water's water treatment site and outright hostility to developing Marshall's Airfield, echoed last week by a failure even to welcome the company's response to the council's call for sites for the next local plan. And on this, it looks like the council here is a victim of events rather than a shaper of the city's future. And on Brexit, to revisit that just a moment, because we've talked about this a lot as a council, we find you right up to today, sitting on every fence, throwing up every smokescreen, splitting every hair, all to walk the impossible tightrope between straightforwardly speaking up for Cambridge and defending your party leadership, which wants us to leave the European Union. In the process, ultimately disappointing many people about what your party does with the support they may mistakenly have given it. The words of this administration not only often don't seem to drive results, but they are also treated as cover for actions that drive the reverse of what they say. An anti-poverty strategy, one Cambridge fair for all, would suggest a council intent, at least so far as its own services were concerned, to ensure, for example, inclusivity for people who suffer the double disadvantage of disability and being hard up. But the reality of exorbitant charges on the use of shop mobility made a complete mockery of all that. Words are just getting devalued. So excuse us, Madam Mayor, for not knowing, despite the voluminous annual statement and the fine words, what your leadership of this council really consists of, what your true instincts are, what you have in your heart for this city. It seems to be really all over the place. I want to use a particular current illustration of the type of thing we will be challenging this coming year, showing just how unfocused and muddled this administration has become. It's the scheme to redevelop the Park Street car park. And it's just one example. The council has many projects and schemes. This is the one I happen to be a bit close to. In this one project, we have the following: a plan for a council-owned site providing yet another commercial hotel, precluding and specifically rejecting along the way the suggestion that the redevelopment should provide more housing in a city which is desperately short of it. Same scheme. It purports to reflect a welcome future of lower car use in the city centre, yet it provides squashed cycle parking provision, which has simply to make do with what's left over after the hotel and the car park have taken their piece. Same scheme. It eliminates the existing public toilet provision, a basic council service, just cut out in passing. Now, I'm told this might change, but I've also been told not to count on it. Same scheme. It creates a very attractive very attractive so-called public space, New Jordan's Yard. But it immediately privatises control over it and denies the establishment of a true public right-of-way being created. Same scheme, and with the proposed laying on of a gas supply, it doesn't look much like an exemplar of a zero-carbon building, which you might have thought we would be achieving after the motion that this council adopted last time. So how many of its professed priorities is it possible for this council to squander in the course of just one project? Madam Mayor, it's our role as an opposition to challenge and to try and change things. But what a shambolic state of affairs, which the administration should be getting right first time if they are really core to their purpose, as they say. As we see it, the Labour group has lost its way on this council, in the running of this council. In papering over the cracks with words, they are losing their meaning. The results coming out are not consistent, and we don't see the leadership. And we think Cambridge demands a lot better than this.
Okay, the annual statement of the Labour group will be treated as a motion for adoption, which has deemed to be moved and seconded. The debate on the statement will be followed by a vote on the motion. Is there any debate? Before you put your hands up, we were going to have, if needs be, 3 from the Lib Dems, 3 from Labour and Councillor Hipking. So, is there any debate? Hang on. Can you put your hands up again, Councillor Thornborough, Katie, and Emma? Okay, Richard, Control, and McGurty. Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with Councillor Purr. You get 2 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I welcome very much the commitment of the Labour group to particularly inclusivity and the green initiatives, which I think is great. I think we can all share that. But I am concerned, as Councillor Bick has raised, that there's perhaps not enough concrete proposals here. As we know, it's easy to put lots of words on paper. It's what we often do. But I would like to see more action. Obviously, the Lower Park Street car park redevelopment, we've already seen not only the toilets going, but one of the few accessible toilets was removed from the plans. And we're not entirely convinced of the carbon neutrality of that new development, which worries me, because that should be a priority according to the statement you've put out. I also really welcome the commitment to increased housing, obviously, but this does need to include affordable living spaces with a local living rent. And by this, I do mean genuinely affordable, rather than pegged to the very, very high prices and rents around Cambridge at the moment. And I would urge the Labour group to provide concrete proposals on that, so that how we can push this forward in our city. We also should not need to persuade developers, as mentioned on page 9, to meet sustainability standards. I think we should be insisting on it, and the ruling group can do this. And I know residents that I was speaking to last night in Market Ward were saying they're really keen to push for higher standards. Finally, I do want Cambridge to aim higher the minimum standards in all areas. We should be a leader in the UK on green, carbon neutral design, and we also need to ensure that we protect the interests of our community, particularly those with additional needs and accessibility needs. We should look at incentivising electric and hybrid vehicles. I would argue that would include things like the private coaches that bring a lot of our visitors to the city that you mentioned on page 11. And I think we need to prioritise and reward those who arrive by bike, train or foot and welcome them to our city. Thank you very much.
Councillor Thornborough.
In support of our proposals going forward and the new positions that we have amongst ourselves, I'd like to just say that the work for the new local plan that we are going to be leading on will underpin our values and purposes, and we will see that planning represents public interest, and Cambridge will be leading and will be champions of the planning here in partnership with South Cambs, with the Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership, the Combined Authority and other local authorities. We will be considering our local policies and strategies, and we will link with regional, national and neighbourhood levels for a better outcome for all of our communities. We will be promoting gardens with our cities and the sheds, and because of the shared services, also in the villages, extensions and the new towns. We will be addressing climate change by the improvement in the quality, design and sustainability of new buildings and sites going forward. We will utilise and we will consider the utilisation of innovation and modern methods of construction going forward, with the best use of digital networks and computer-assisted design. We will consider how training and support can better be provided for our planners to develop their skills, to enable them to be a catalyst for visionary local planning, and to ensure we retain and encourage our employees for this authority. We will better support the housing and construction sector, particularly small buildings, and how this can play a part to deliver the new houses and infrastructure to a greater diversity in this section. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations on your elevation back onto the dais. I just want to speak briefly on one or two areas relating to my portfolio that wasn't touched upon by Councillor Herbert in his main speech. Specifically, the issue of the private rental sector, because we know that not everyone can or wishes to rent socially. And we will redouble our efforts over the next year and beyond to do what we can to ensure that tenants who rent privately get a fair deal in the private rental sector. And because we will work in partnership, we have been working in partnership and we will continue to work in partnership with neighbouring councils, developers and the registered providers to ensure that wherever development occurs within the city, there will be a range of houses of all forms of tenure, of all kinds of affordability, including the intermediate rental levels, which there is a dearth of within our city. In addition, we will consult on expanding property licensing to cover more privately rented homes in the city, so that the small minority, and there is a small minority, of landlords who fail their tenants can be brought into line. We'll also be taking action on empty homes, because whilst we have delivered, I think, over 130 over the last few years, empty homes being brought back into use. We want to do more, and we want to actually have a net increase in the number of homes that we have been able to bring back into use over the next couple of years. So hopefully this will give you just a little bit more of a flavour as to what we will be doing over the forthcoming year in the housing portfolio.
Councillor Cantrell?
Well, I must say, Madam Mayor, if that's what all the Executive Council for Housing can come up with in terms of housing for the next 12 months, it's a real shame. Housing in this city, Madam Mayor, housing in this city is one of the critical issues that we need to deliver on. And I have to say, Madam Mayor, what we have from this administration on housing is a dogma. Now, 500 council homes, everybody knows we need as many council homes as possible, but that's all this administration is able to talk about. Nothing beyond that bandwidth of the 500 council houses. And actually, if you look at the delivery of the 500 council houses, I was at the symposium yesterday with the Executive Councillor, and actually the professionals there, the carbon zero professionals, were saying it's a shame that you're not able to be more ambitious on those 500 council houses. There are 2 developments in this city, delivered by this authority, that meet that ambition. They said it, not me. Marmalade Lane and the Viredo expansion in the Southern Fringe, where we delivered 50% affordable on passive homes. Now, where is that ambition? It's all talk. What you have is a Mill Road development where you have somewhere in the region of 100 car parking spaces in the centre of the city. And then you claim that you will be the torch holder for tackling climate change, for the climate change emergency. Well, I see none of it. And actually, we will continue to hold you to account. And I hope during the course of these 12 months, you might take on board some of the suggestions we come up with, because we want to be constructive about delivering housing for the people of this city.
Councillor McGurty?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations on your re-elevation. It has, perhaps unsurprisingly, with an election tomorrow, been a rancorous first meeting of the Council for the civic year, and I will attempt to strike a slightly different tone. We are all aware that Greater Cambridge area continues to experience sustained economic growth. And while many in Cambridge will benefit from a ready supply of good jobs, whether it's at PhD level or the huge number of key workers needed to run the city, to educate our young people and care for the sick and elderly, others strongly believe that the pressure to expand, build more homes, roads and schools risks permanently damaging the city, the uniqueness and beauty that attracts people here in the first place. And few would argue that the infrastructure needed to support this growth has lagged behind, to the detriment of our air quality and the comfort of people's daily lives. While there may be a range of employment available in the city, many are priced out of the housing market and faced with a difficult choice to live further away, with few good options rather than to drive in to work each day. But it's by no means all doom and gloom, Madam Mayor. To argue against abundant opportunity would be to overlook the huge number of people whose lives are likely to be improved. Those of us in secure homes owe it to others not to pull up the drawbridge. So we must redouble our efforts, working together cross-party here in the GCP and the combined authority as best we know how, to deliver the promise of a railway station at Cambridge South, new public transport, footpaths, cycleways and other aspects of the sustainable lifestyle that we all need to adopt. We must help people to increase recycling and to reduce waste, and we must protect the natural environment and its biodiversity. Because ultimately, we want people to enjoy the experience of living in this fantastic city as much as we do, and pass it on in good condition to the next generation for them to enjoy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hipkin, did you want to say anything?
I only want to say that I think the city is actually very well governed at the moment. And it's a mark of how well governed it is that this group didn't take a single seat away from the leading group. I think that's testament to the fact that the people of the city differentiate between the local Labour Party and the National Labour Party. And thank goodness they do. I just want to draw attention, if I may, to one matter, which is this section of the leader's statement, in which Cambridge as a place to be enjoyed is referred to. I think the opening sentence where the council recognises the importance of our city centre for our residents, and I'd like to stop there. Can I remind people that this is a city that people actually live in? The city centre is a place of community, a place where local residents like to feel that they are welcome and that they have literally space to move around. We have an explosion of mass tourism in this city. 5 to 8 million in 5 years. It's incredible. If it goes on in this trajectory, there will be 13 million in the next 5 years. Now, we can't sustain this. We've really got to do something about it. And one of the things that we should be doing is to make it more inconvenient to come into the city centre, rather than making it more convenient. And I consider that all tourist buses should be required to terminate at park and ride sites, and that visitors would then be required to enter the city by the normal bus services. But that is a dream, and that is a hope.
Thank you very much. Councillor Herbert. Oh, sorry. Councillor Smith, I didn't have you on my list. Sorry.
And could I congratulate you again on your elevation, and also congratulate Councillor Porrer on her maiden speech. Welcome. I just want to speak a little bit, very briefly, to our first commitment, which is to tackle inequality and share prosperity. Since becoming exec for communities, I've obviously made it my business to look in detail through what we're already doing, as well as to help plan for the future. And I'm so proud to be part of a council which is doing so much, so many specific things. I'll pull out one thing: £300,000 for the Citizens Advice Bureau. Well over £1 million of grants being given out at a time when we have horrific austerity. And somehow we've preserved that. I'm so proud of what we're doing. And I have to say there is concrete example after concrete example, and I'm very happy to share the councillor's report that I helped to write during the local election campaign, if my colleagues across the chamber would like to see some examples, because I think officers have done an amazing job in putting that vision into practice, and I really want to thank them. We want to keep pushing on it, though. Cambridge is a divided city. And until Cambridge becomes less divided, we haven't finished, and we have to keep working. There are some fantastic projects for pushing on equality of access for culture, in helping to continue to champion the living wage, the real living wage, to build new community centres, to improve new ones, to work with community groups, to encourage volunteering, to provide a financial inclusion officer, to continue to support with council tax reductions. We have to work as hard as we can, and we commit to doing that, to ensure that Cambridge continues to be a city that fights to be one Cambridge, fair for all.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Herbert, as leader, you have a right to reply of 2 minutes.
Well, I was hoping to hear from Councillors Bick or Councillor Cantrell some positive suggestions. Now, I take the fact that Councillor Cantrell did include some references to housing, but in addition to us being a tale of two cities in division, we've effectively got, in the 4 contributions that we've heard, a tale of 2 Liberal Democrat parties. We had positive and thoughtful contributions from Councillors McGurty and Councillor Porrer. I'm not holding them all to be as polite and thoughtful in the future, but it was basically first-class degrees in denigration from Councillor Bick and from Councillor Cantrell. Are you going to spend the whole of this year trying to damage the reputation of the council, trying to attack projects? Just taking your 2 examples, Councillor Bick. Nothing about electric charging, nothing about shrinking the city centre car park in half, nothing at all about the £10 million that will be raised from that project for housing. Nothing about the fact that Jordan's Yard will be a stunning improvement to that area. Nothing from you. Just attack. Negativity. We will come to that issue, as we will come to the issues of the detailed design of the planning application. How many applicants actually go out in the way that this council goes out to your community, to everybody in the city centre, and we listen. The planning application has yet to be submitted. On Cambridge North East, we have the classic effect of deception. You had 16,000 undeliverable homes. It's only this council that, assisted by, and Councillor Smith's rightly saying it, we are so fortunate about the delivery by officers that you, Councillor Bick, keep denigrating. It was only this council, our officers, assisted by being in a combined authority, that achieved 227 million. So, as Councillor McGurty, and I'll just finish with one sentence, rightly says, before we talk about major new development, let's listen to the public, what kind of Cambridge they want for the next 10 and 30 years.
To the vote, please can I see those in favour of the recommendation?
23.
And those against? And those abstaining? Thank you. Okay, this concludes the annual meeting, but just before, I've got a couple of things I'd like to say. First of all, they've left now, but my grandchildren, youngest grandchildren, they were so good, so quiet and patient, bless their hearts. So I really wanted to congratulate them, but they've gone out. But yeah. No, and can I say thank you to you all in the chamber as well for being, helping me with the strict timing this morning, especially. We went through it, and I was so pleased. Yeah, I was so pleased how it went. So thank you all, and for behaving as well. Anyway, lunch is served in the members' room. If you give me a few minutes, I'll meet you in there. Enjoy lunch, everybody. Everybody's invited. Thank you.